In medicine and money, a huge challenge of the pandemic has been the availability of reliable testing of COVID. Well, now investors are being made aware there's a new test by a biotech, and it's the first and only T-cell test for consumers on the market. Joining us now with the details of this new breakthrough test is Dr. Lance Baldo, the Chief Medical Officer at Adaptive Biotechnologies, who developed the test, and Diana Berrent. She's the founder of a survivor group that is supporting people who have had long-term effects of coronavirus. Thanks so much to both of you for being here. And doctor, please tell us about this new test.
Well, Angie, we're really excited that just this past Friday, the FDA issued what's called an emergency use authorization for this test. And so this is the first clinical test for patients that uses T cells to diagnose any disease. In this case, it's diagnosing people with recent or prior COVID-19. And if you want more information on this test, you can go to t-detect.com. Everything as far as ordering can be done virtually, online, either mobile device or on a computer, with the exception that it is requiring a blood draw. And so you can go to one of about 2,000 LabCorp blood draw centers across the country, or if you'd prefer, we could send someone to your house to draw your blood. And then about 7 to 10 days later, you'll get a result via a secure portal.
Diana, what does this test do to help people who suspect they've had COVID-19? And what about the antibodies?
So I think that it's an incredible test. So not only if you're wondering whether or not you had COVID, but even if you did have COVID, it is almost like taking your fingerprint, but of your immune system. So it's giving you all of this incredible information because each of our immune systems actually reacts very differently. And as we move forward into a much more complex landscape, as things, we're already dealing with the financial ramifications of this disease, whether or not you had a diagnosis could determine whether or not you are covered by disability insurance, whether or not your medical care is what kind of insurance it's covered under. It has a lot of people are unable to go back to work months and months after very mild cases of COVID. So having this information is yet another tool in our toolkit. And as patients, we need as many as possible because we have to make more and more choices, and we need as much information and to be stewards of our own data going forward. So this is a huge piece of the puzzle for patients.
What else can you tell us? And does it matter if you've had the antibodies? Should you still get the vaccine?
So I want to contrast this with antibody tests that look for exactly what you just stated, look for antibodies. This is another equally important part of the immune system called T cells. And T cells do 3 really important things, amongst other things. And they help the body to produce antibodies. They look for cells that have been infected with SARS-CoV-2. And the third thing they do is they keep a memory of this past infection. And they can stick around, we've now seen in our research, for many months. And in some conditions, we see them stick around for many years. And that's what makes it a really ideal target for a diagnostic test. And you're right, there's different applications of this test to be able to establish who's had this in the past, to be able to, in fact, link potential future symptoms of COVID to having had COVID in the past and maybe never being diagnosed. The CDC and the FDA recommendations is still independent of whether or not you've had COVID. You should go ahead and get vaccinated, in fact, get both doses of vaccines. But there are some emerging data that would suggest that if, in fact, you had COVID in the past and you have an immune reaction, you could get by with only 1 dose. But I want to be very clear that the CDC and the FDA are still recommending 2 doses of vaccine for everyone. If you'd like to get more information, go to t-detect.com.
Well, thanks so much for talking about this breakthrough on our show today.
Thank you so much for having us on.
Thank you, Angie.
More Business First AM. Check us out on social media. We're on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And go to businessfirstam.com for where to see our show on TV.